Hello and welcome. Okay, so what I want to do today is talk a little bit about Vue and start introducing Vue components. Okay, so first I have a sort of review of some of the Vue code that we were doing, and then I want to describe how to use the component system in Vue. Okay. So first of all, there is a homework that has been postponed. I think you all know it. It's due tomorrow. Are there any general questions about the homework or general things that you would like me to discuss before I begin the material? Let me open the chat window so that I can see what's going on. Yeah, I'm out for the week. I wasn't sure whether this week I would be essentially well enough to be able to drive to campus. And so I organized my lectures to be on Zoom so that I was sure I would be able not to miss them. Okay. Okay. How do we display checkmark? So let me see a moment what the questions are. Display checkmark. Yeah, how do I display a checkmark? I think I may have done some example, but I can give some live example a moment here. Perhaps it's not such a bad idea. Let me try to do an example on the fly of how to do a checkmark. So let me share the screen and start a moment. Okay, so git checkout Vue. So I go back to my clean branch. And how do I do a checkmark from start? Let me try to do it just to see how they would be to actually do it. So so imagine I want to put a button, and the button does a call, and when the call comes back, I want to flash the check mark. How do I do it? I do a button. Okay, I can say v on click is equal to, I don't know, like do call. Okay, then I close the button, and then I don't know, I can say press like save, which is something reasonable to say, and then here I give an I tag class is equal to fa. What is a good class for a checkmark? Does anybody know? Let me minimize this window. There must be some people in the chat. Oh, I hate this. Why is it so hard to see? Fa check or fa check square. Let's use a fa check, okay? Because I don't think I want the square around for this. Fa check, okay? So so this should work. Let me just maybe change line. It doesn't matter so much. Okay. And let me try to write this method. So the method, I called it do call, self do call. Okay. I hope I don't get these things wrong. I sort of hope always that they work, but I make mistakes like you or more than you. And so today I really tied myself into a loop. I can tell you later exactly how. So this is a function that gets called, okay? And what do we want to do here? Well, ideally, I would like to do a server call, but well, yeah, but I don't want to do the call. I just want to say, do the call. Oops, sorry. Like put here the call. Following code should be in callback. Okay, so the callback function is the one that you execute when the call is successful. Okay, and so let me revise a moment this code. This check mark shouldn't always be here, right? So we should write something like vo if is equal to I simply call it confirm. Maybe you want a better name for yourself, right? Confirm, and I say that it's initialized to false. Okay, so the check mark is not there initially. And then I can simply say something like confirm is equal to true. And then I can say set interval. And fortunately, it tells me the format because I continually forget, right? So I need to say first what to do, and then the delay. So what to do is a function in which the only thing I do is self vo confirm is equal to false. Okay, and sorry, 1 second. This is a comma, and the delay can be 1 second. So let's see whether this actually works. So I go in the browser, I reload, okay, and okay, the color scheme is going to be horrible, okay. Oh, this is something that I really need to teach you at some point, how to do a much better color schemes for these kind of things. So what happens if I click on save? Nothing. Why? Because this is silly. Self vo confirm. Seems I continually make this sort of semi-silly errors. Okay, so that's the behavior we want. Yeah, no attendance yet. Okay, fine. Let me build this attendance thing because I can tell you later. I'm a bit late preparing the class because I also ran into a bug trying to prepare it. So ask me some entertaining question that you would like me to discuss by voice while I finally build this spreadsheet, because unfortunately everything takes time. So I need a moment to build this attendance spreadsheet. Spring. Okay, I'm still working on this. Okay. I'm almost there. Okay, I think we are there. So, okay, let me share the screen. Sorry, I felt particularly silly when I created the questions because I didn't know what to ask. Okay. But here is the information. Okay, so you have a URL and you also have a QR code. Let me check 1 second only that you can actually sign in. No, of course you couldn't. Okay. Yeah, I hate these things. So there's always one more thing to be done. Okay, so ask me questions by voice because I can't really do anything while this QR code is displaying on the screen. Anybody wants to ask, courageous enough to speak?
Can you show the website?
Not quite, because if I show the website, then the QR code goes away, right? Oh, you mean, can I show the URL? Okay. Is this okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Let me put it in the chat, actually. This is the best. I shouldn't have bothered. 1 second, okay? Chat, and there it is. Okay, so this is way better. I'm sorry. So it should stay there, right? So I can probably move on with the rest of the class, okay? Because you have it in the chat. Okay. Good, great. Let me now move on to the rest of the. Sorry?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If we have a user who writes a review but doesn't set a star rating, or they set a star rating but don't write a review, do we need to show that in the list of reviews, or do we only show the ones that have a star rating and a written review?
Oh my goodness, I don't think I specified it. I think that the best way is to still show it, okay? And in fact, I wanted at some point to give you a class. It's only that I didn't know, what order was best for the topics. So I thought I would give these, talk about these maybe next time as we go more into how to deploy things on the cloud. But let me just mention it very quickly. There is a slight problem here that I'm not testing for this homework. And the problem is as follows. The problem is that, sorry, yeah, you see I was playing with Git. Actually, let me stop the share so you can see me. I mean, it's not that my face is so incredibly interesting, but. So the problem is as follows, that you are writing different pieces of information. You are writing a rating and a review. And so some of the question is, do you write them in the same database tables or you write them in different database tables? Precisely because of that, right? Because a user can be writing the review, then can play with a star rating. And so, and so do you want to have a single table that contains both the star rating and the review, or do you want to split it in two, right? My preference, my strong preference somewhat, in fact, would be to split these into tables, if one could. So the two-table solution makes the information a little bit harder to put together if you were to, say, dump it to a file for doing data science, right? In a data science application, what you would like to do is dump everybody's reviews with the star ratings, and maybe analyze what's the correlation between the words used in the review and the stars given, or things like that. And if you do that, it would be easier for you to have one table in which you have one column called star rating, another one called review text, and so it would be easier to dump out altogether, right? But in a sense, when you do the dump, you have time. So even if you have to do a database join based on the common review ID or something like that, I don't think it's such big of a deal. When I build a website, I often like instead to make sure that each API call is, if you can manage it, the only one that writes to a particular table. You don't want to have two API calls that come from entirely different pages places in the page that actually modify the same table. because then you have problems with asynchronicity, right? That you might have two of these calls on the fly, and they might interfere in the database, right? And these can be problematic. So because you would have essentially one call for when you finish writing the review, and another call when you do the star rating, that would come very next to each other. And in general, databases are happier and easier to manage, and you can choose cheaper databases if every call that you do to the database, I mean, if every action that is taken in the browser writes a fully independent place in the database, because in that case, you don't need to worry about the database consistency and locks and anything else, okay? So sorry for the long-winded reply. I want to go in another class after we finish with Vue, basically. I want to do a class on database transactions, so that we did only superficially at the beginning of the class. And essentially database organization, how to lay out the data so that you can access it cheaply, okay? Let me see if there are any other questions.
I have a quick follow-up to that one, if it's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So if we're querying the database with two tables and we want to do something like star.email is equal to review.email, how do we still get the aspects of the review if there is no star rating in there? So if we want to, will we just use like a left join on that?
This is because you're thinking of doing a join, but maybe you can simply do two queries, right? You have a star table and you have a review table. You query the star table, you query the review table, and then you return the two results. Would that be so terrible? Otherwise, yes. You would have to do a left join. So left joins, I haven't talked about them in class really. I have joins in which some of the information in one of the two tables can be missing. Okay. Cover left join. Do you need left joins for this homework? Yeah. I don't have an example already of left join, but essentially, let me see if I can very quickly show you something. Let me do it just briefly, because I'm not. But let me show you directly the code. Web2Py left database abstraction there. Oh, I'm not showing the window. One second. Sorry. No, where tutorials point? Yeah. I just want to land on a pre-done example also, because myself I use them rarely, and so I forget the precise syntax every time. Okay, left out of join. Okay, but this is a good enough example for now. Hey, where did it go? Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, there was a problem in finding the right line. I resized. So this is a database that contains a person and a thing, and the join condition would be, so if you were writing a normal join, you would write something like this query. Okay, this would be the query that you would write without writing this db person all db thing all left is equal to this. Okay, you would simply say db open db person id is equal to db thing owner id closed dot select. So let me write it separately. A normal join would work in this fashion. Let me just find an editor. Yes, this is my sort of scratchpad editor. It's an old version of Sublime. No, this is a URL of. So I will 1 second. I would have. So a normal join would work like this. Rows is equal to db open. Then there would be the query. Okay, and then there would be a select. A left outer join instead works as above. So what is the difference between these and, oh shoot, these and these? Okay, the difference is that in the simple join, that is this one, you need both a person and a thing to exist. Okay, and the problem is that some people have no things in your database. Okay, so if you do something like this, if a person has no things, the equality would never be satisfied, and you would not be able to fish out the person. Okay, so instead, in the above case, if you do a left join, it says, well, what is on the left is actually optional. I do not know why it's on the left, because I always imagine it on the right. So I'm incredibly confused when I look at joins, by the way. But this is just my craziness personally, right? So what you are saying in this select is this, that you want every people and everything. But you give a constraint, a left join constraint that says that db things have to be selected on db person id is equal to db thing owner id. Okay, and this essentially has the meaning that this part is optional. Okay, and so that things may not be found. And so this is a result of an example of query in which you see that Alex has boat, Alex has chair, Bob has shoes, Carol has none. If you did simply the query below, what you would see is Alex has boat, Alex has chair, okay, Bob has shoes, okay, and that would be it. There would be no line for Carl, because for Carl, this equality could not be true. Okay, because for Carl, the ID of Carl would not correspond to the owner ID for anything that you have in the database. So the easy way to think at left joins are joins in which it's optional for you to have values for one of the variables, for one of the columns. Okay, I hope this clarifies what they are. Let me look at the chat. Professor Mackey is not in my Git repo, no. I don't have it versioned. No, I'm just kidding. Can you left join with the 3 tables? Yes, I think so. There are more complicated ways of doing it. I think you can pass a list to it. Multiple left join can be combined by passing a list of tuple to db my table on to the left parameter. Why are you so incredibly worried about doing these incredibly complicated joins? I didn't think this would be required for the homework, but maybe you are very curious about other applications. By the way, this data interface, data abstraction layer, you can use it also outside of Web2Py. It's called DAL, DAL, and I think you can just download it from GitHub. The maintainer is used to be Massimo Di Piero, the author of Web2Py. Now is a person called Giovanni, based in Chicago. But so GitHub, no, Gitbug, yeah, GitHub DAL Web2Py. Let me see. PyDAL. Okay, this is it. So this is. Who are the contributors? Just for me to check is, yeah, Massimo Di Piero is the main one, but Giovanni Barillari has become, is in Como, Italy, I'm sorry, has become the other, main maintainer of it, and then there are, like 100 people maintaining it. But so I found it often convenient. The one drawback, I don't know why I'm talking about this, because it was not the main topic of the of the lecture. But the main drawback of using the database abstraction layer is this: that every time you read from the database and you iterate on the rows of the database abstraction layer is building objects for you, right? A row is an object, and so it needs to essentially parse the results of the MySQL query and build the object. These are found it to be absolutely fine if you are reading up to a few dozen objects each time. Occasionally, I have written a very heavyweight code that needs to loop through, you know, many millions of objects as quickly as possible to do some operations on them. And in that case, actually, it's a little bit easier to use the lower level database APIs, because you can save on all this object creation and just use the results as they come to you. Okay, so let me stop here. Actually, I want to talk more about databases and consistency later. I want to. So, are there any other questions? Okay. Should I save this code that I did for the? Why not? So git checkout branch like easy, like vu easy confirm, a bit bigger font. Okay, git commit am. So you have the code if it's useful for you. Easy confirm check mark. Okay. Git push origin vu easy confirm. Okay, great. This should work. Okay, good. So another thing that I wanted to say about vu is the following. So somebody, I think I mentioned it in the past, but I don't know that I mentioned it well enough. So if you look at my code, let me check out my code. Git checkout vu 5 stars, I think it is. Yes. My code had one aspect on which maybe I didn't draw enough attention when I presented it in class. I have this function that is called process posts in some sample code, okay? In which I take a post list and I do various stuff to it to bring it to a normalized format. And in particular, I do two things. I enumerate it, which by now you must know very well. You know, I add these indices that make it easy for me to retrieve the various posts. And then I do another thing. That is, I set extra fields to an object, okay? So you must have wondered, why do I do this? Right? I could have written, you might think, e._smile is equal to e.like. No? This seems much more readable. Why do I use vu set e smile e.like? The reason is this. If you do it as in this line, colored blue now, then you do define a new field smile of the element e. But what happens is that vu doesn't know about it. Unfortunately, there is no, creating a new field of an object is a very primitive object, a very primitive operation in JavaScript. And vu is not able to actually detect it, okay? So the _smile field would start to exist, but vu would have no way of tracking the changes, because when you define a field, for vu to be aware of it and keeping the UI in sync with the JavaScript, and vu needs to essentially decorate something like _smile, this field, with methods that detect when you set a value into the _smile field, so that if you set a value into it, it's able to update the UI. If you do a direct assignment like this, everything works except, and it's a very big except, when you change e._smile, the UI will not be updated, okay? So the short of it is, when you define a new fields for an object, you have to use this vu set syntax that is documented here, okay? And there is another gotcha, which is if you have an array, let me just use this as Scratchpad. It's not very elegant, but whatever, I have it here. If you have an array, you cannot actually write something like my array of 4 is equal to my new object. Okay? Because if you do this, the position 4 of the array will be updated all right. That's not the problem. The problem is that Wu will not know about it. Wu is blind to a couple of things, which are setting a new field in an object and setting brutally, I mean, not brutally, but setting an element in an array by just assigning to the array index. That also doesn't quite work. Okay? So how do you do those things? There is a page of documentation in reactivity in depth that explains essentially, you may want to read it really, that there is this Wu set instruction. This creates the new field. And then there is also a set function for arrays. Where is defined for arrays? Change detection caveats. Oh boy. Yeah, this documentation is well done, but array change detection, so it's here. These methods are all wrapped. Okay, but there is a limitation. So you see, the direct assignment is not recognized. And so you must again do a Wu set of the items, index of the item, which will be 1 in this example, and new value, which is X in that example. Okay? So there are these two important caveats to how to update. So cases in which you need to use Wu set. You use the same Wu set, because I told you when we were describing JavaScript that arrays are represented internally as objects where the index of the array is a field, is an attribute, and then it maps to the value of the position of the array in that position. So in a sense, the same Wu set that we were using to create new attributes to an object can also be used to do assignment to arrays in the proper way. Okay? And these bugs, unfortunately, are very, very insidious. There was a student who came to my office hours on Zoom this morning, and the student was quite rightly very puzzled, because the problem is it looks to you as if you're doing everything right. You can print the values and they look right. All the arrays are defined in the right way. All the objects have the right fields, except nothing works. And so you go in a loop in which you really wonder whether you have become mad or whatever is happening, right? And the answer to that is that no, you are not mad, but Wu is not able to observe the changes that you are making to the JavaScript data structures, okay? Layout HTML, oh, and the double Wu declaration. Ouch. But why? Why did you lose 2 days? I mean, yeah, it's not a great thing to have, but still, why did it hamper you? I mean, you're not supposed, I don't know. Okay, maybe we discuss this more in another occasion, okay? So this is one of the things I wanted to tell you. The other thing is that I wanted to start to do a bit of components in Vue. So I wanted to go here. So git checkout Vue star components 1. Yeah, this was a bad idea. Okay. Any other question on the homework or on other things that you would like to ask me before I dive into these? Okay, so let me get into these. The idea is this. It would be often very nice if we can reuse code in a bit of a nicer way. I actually like Vue quite a bit even without using components. There is a Bing. I don't know if it's you or if it's something that's happening on my laptop. So type something on the chat if you want to talk, because otherwise it can be anything. So I was saying, I actually like quite a bit of the normal use of Vue without components, because I find it somewhat straightforward and pleasant and quick to use. But the drawback is that when you design pages, there are often pieces that you like to use both in multiple places on the same page and also in multiple pages, okay? For example, now we have a lot of code, I mean, not a lot of code, but some code that draws stars, right? And then every page where we want to draw stars, you actually have to git checkout Vue 5 stars. You actually have to repeat some code, right? So all this code here is related to stars, and correspondingly there is code here that is purely related to stars, which is here, stars out, stars over, set stars. And so this is not so incredibly nice, because if I need to design multiple pages in which I use this star widget, it becomes a sort of code maintenance problem, right? That here I can here I would have to essentially say, okay, these are the 3 functions I need to cut and paste. Then I cut and paste them also to put them into some other JavaScript. I need to every time cut and paste these particular lines here in order to do the steps in another place. And this is just not a very structured way of building a UI. Imagine that we are building a commerce site. Maybe I want to at least develop some star rating so that you can see, for example, the star rating of products, both when I put the products in a grid, but also when I give you the magnified view of an individual product with its star rating and then other descriptions or so on and so forth, right? So in general, especially as you started to put more and more energy into polishing your UI, you would like to be able to create some nice components that have a behavior that you can then reuse in multiple places of your UI. I don't know if this makes sense to you, but you know, this is a general concern one has, right? So what we have done now is very pleasant in the sense that yes, it has been taken, but you can still take it. What we are doing is very pleasant in the sense that you can you write a page in a sort of very natural flow from top to bottom. But the drawback of it is that if you want to reuse different UI elements in multiple places in your site, that's kind of a nuisance, right? Because you need to remember essentially what is the HTML that is associated with what code, and you need also to remember, you know, how the code interacts with the rest of the code in that particular page. You know, it's a mess. It's like, you know, yanking out a piece of code from from a more general context and having to figure out what are sort of all the spaghetti connections between that piece of code and the rest in terms of shared variables. It's not so pleasant, right? So what we want to learn how to do is build a component that represents the stars, okay? And so I'll do it in a couple of simple steps. And actually, I want to play with the steps a little bit as well. So the first step, I have it here. Sorry, let me go here a moment. Vue star components 1. So let me check it out a moment. I simplified all the code, right? I got rid of the list of posts and everything else, and I just did purely some code that displays star ratings. So this is my code. I created essentially, wait. Okay, I created essentially a Vue component that is called stars. Okay, and this will be a component that has an embedded behavior, and then I just planked it 2 times in my web page. I could plank it as many times as I want, and every time I put it in, this stars component has some behavior that I define. So let's see how this looks. This is a very simple implementation at first. This is my site. Okay, so you see I have 2 of these ratings components, and they work in a way that I can set them independently, obviously. Okay, and so to create one more star rating that I can place anywhere on the page, what I need to do is simply put again one of these star thingies. How is one of these star thingies designed? By the way, I find these rather fascinating because to many of you it must be obvious, because some of you may have looked in other classes on how to design user interfaces and how to encapsulate things that have both a visual aspect, a visual appearance, and also behavior, right? But for those of you who haven't, most of the times in computer science, essentially, you have looked a lot at how to encapsulate behavior. Since your first class, probably in computer science, they taught you what a function is, and a function encapsulates behavior. You define a function that does something, and then you build upon it other functions that do something more in terms of that function. Here, we want to do something a little bit different, because a piece like this on the screen, we have 3 components. It will have a behavior, but it will also have a visual appearance, and it will also have a way to alert other components to events. So essentially, it will have events. So instead of one main way of communicating, that is what we have in normal code, we have here 3 ways: events, events, appearance, and behavior. If you will, events are not so different from exceptions in programming languages such as Java or Python. So the 2 ways that are truly new are, the thing that we are really adding is the appearance, I guess. Okay, so let me go to how we do it, okay? So we need to encapsulate appearance and behavior. So the appearance is captured, we do something like this, by the way, sorry. We are defining global components. I want to go by stages, and the global components are the easiest to define first. So I define a component that is called stars. So this name is this name. Okay. The template is what describes the visual appearance. So essentially, I have here the key code that produces the stars. I have the on mouse out, stars out, or mouse over, click events, and then I drive the behavior of the stars, again by having these num stars to display, star indices, which tells me how many stars I should define, should have, and num stars. Again, like very similarly to the homework situation, this is the number of stars that I clicked, and this is the number of stars that I should be displaying. Okay? So the behavior is similar to before, you know, when you hover, I set the number of stars to display to the index. This is the line that I use for hovering. When I click, I set the number of stars to be the current index. And when I move away, out, okay, I say that the number of stars to display should reflect again the permanent number of stars. So this is a behavior we have already seen. We can see it again in a moment, but you see, when I hover, I start displaying the number of stars that I'm hovering on related to the index, okay? And when I click, nothing happens visually, but I store permanently the new number of stars. When I hover, when I move out, the true number of stars is reflected in the display, exactly as before. Okay? So I define these three methods, and I define the data. Here, there is a very, very tiny catch, which is really not a very complicated catch at all. But you see that data now is a function that returns the definitions. Normally, in the global view, data is not a function, it's just an object. Okay? So why is now data a function? The problem is this, that each one of these stars will have its own variables. If I define it here via an object, if I wrote data is equal to, suppose I eliminate all this piece of code, right? And I just return an object. If I did that, then all the star instances of this component would share the same state. It's almost worth doing it to play with it. Yeah, let's do it. Oops, what did you do? One second. I think I messed up something. So this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do these and as well eliminate one of the. Okay. So if I do these, you will see that the behavior is really quite different. Oh, oops, there is an error. Uncaught reference. Star indices is not defined. Ooh, okay, fine. Okay, fine. They must have updated in the new version so that they only accept a function. I don't know. But so that's the essentially the one catch, that the data needs to be a function. Okay, so and I can define data, methods, and the template. Okay, and just as before. Okay. Any questions so far? Yes. What is the question? Let me wait a moment to see whether it's happy. Can you extract the templates as a file? Yes, you can. Okay. No, the templates as a file. No, typical. Okay, yes. This is one of the things I don't incredibly like about doing things this way. You see, it's a very stupid thing, but when I edit here, I have all the support of an editor that knows that I'm writing something that looks like HTML, and so this should be, the editor helps me indent and do a lot of stuff. When I write here, I'm just writing a big ugly string. So is there a way to extract this big ugly string to a file? And the reply can be maybe, but I don't know how easily. And I haven't seen it done incredibly often. I will think at it, but I don't know yet. Okay? And I do find it ugly. I mean, it's one of the reasons for which, unless I need it, I don't particularly like doing this, because this is writing just a normal string. I mean, I still have a bit of help, the tabs still work, but I don't have any particular signal when I close a tag, as I have here, where the corresponding open tag is highlighted. I mean, it's just a better way to edit, I guess. Okay. Okay. Good. So this is okay, but it doesn't do very much, okay? Because every time I load the page, these are set to 0, and even if I set them to some value, there is no way that this value can be communicated to anything else. So I actually want to build that communication, and I want to check out the branch that I just built before the class. And unfortunately, I made a bug, so so it took me quite a bit of time, and the bug was completely stupid. But I will show you nevertheless what my problem was at the end. Or I think you can look in the Git repo if you're curious, actually. So I modified the code in this way. I wanted some star ratings that are able to talk to a backend API, right? So that when you set one of these stars to say 1 star and the other to 4, if I reload the page, I reload the same state. I wanted that each one of them has a particular place in the database where this value is stored, and when you display the stars, you go fish the value first, and when you update the star values, the value is sent back to the database and updated. Okay? Yeah, I'm not advising to you to do these for the homework, right? I just want you to know, because I think in general, these component systems are gaining a lot of traction, and one of their main uses is not only you to organize your code better, but you using somebody else's components that solve a problem particularly well. Suppose you want to add some animation to your web page, or for example, suppose you want to display, I don't know, calendar days with with events in them. Somebody must have invented some Vue component for displaying nicely a day with times and event names on it. And so you could reuse that component together with its behavior inside your own site. Another example would be, suppose you want to give a list of items, and you want the user to be able to reorder those items on the screen, right? And then you might use something like that. Okay, 1 second. Let me go to the implementation. How do I do these? Okay. So I'm not claiming that this is the best implementation. It was done, frankly, a little bit in a hurry because I thought I had more time and I had a super stupid bug. Happens to me as well. But what I did is this: I defined two star get and set URL. This is what I find ugly, and we should remedy it by defining it by making also a parameter of a component. But it's not a big deal. So now, when I create a star component, to each star I give a to each star field I give a parameter. This I call it 1. This I call it 2. Essentially, this parameter here, this star ID, will be the correspondence between the display and the database, right? This will specify which value this particular element on the screen is populated from the star ID 1 in the database and saves to the star ID 1 the number of stars in the database, okay? I have to essentially establish this correspondence in some place, and that's where I establish it. So if we look at the tables, just for you to know what's going to be in the database, I built the simplest possible table possible. And so the table is called star rating. It has a star ID that corresponds to that 1 or 2, and then a rating, which is just an integer, okay? So that's what I do for the backend, sort of. Oh, and by the way, all my my computer crashed. It was one of those days in which the productivity is not as high as you wish it was. So I have these two methods. I show them to you now just to get them out of the way, right? There is a get stars method in which I simply I'm given a star ID, and I'm given an ID variable. I look up the star ID that has that ID, and I return rating 0 if there is no record, so which is true at the beginning. You may have added a new element, but there may be nothing in the database, and otherwise I return the rating. Okay, And the set stars is very similar. Again, I'm given an ID, but I'm also given a number of stars that I should be setting. And what I do is that I do an update or insert statement, right? Because I do not know if a record that has a star ID equal to my star ID is already in the database or not. So I search it, and if it's there, I will update, otherwise I will insert it, but it will have a star ID as specified by my request, and a rating that is also as specified by my request. You know, notice that the rating I expect it to be an integer, but the star ID instead is completely arbitrary. So when I give, maybe I shouldn't have called it 1, because this 1 here is actually treated as a string throughout my code. Okay, I can say like star ID is equal to Joe, and it will be just fine. Okay. So just to get out of the way what is in the database. So each one of these fields has this ID that will be its own, you know, special field. And so this is my component. Now the definition is a little bit longer. The template is basically unchanged. There is only one small change that I will describe. So the data, so first of all, in props, props is equivalent to listing the arguments of a function. You are listing here all the parameters that you can pass to the function. And you pass these parameters via a vbind statement. Okay? This is the simple-minded way of passing parameters. If you look in the Vue documentation, and we may be using it in the following, you can actually specify also the type for each parameter, in which case Vue helps you a little bit, so that if you have, you know, integer parameters or things like that, Vue is going to convert them to from the string to the numeric type. As usual, if you say nothing, these are going to be taken to be strings. Okay, so so what else? In the data, I have a ready flag, and the rest is actually identical. Okay, so what is the point of the ready flag? That actually was the one difficult, the one annoying thing for me to get to work, because I had this, that's where I had the stupid bug. There are 2 points to it. So first, it's a little bit nicer if I don't show the stars before I know their value. Okay, so I set ready to false, and then a Vue component has lifetime hooks. Let me show you where they are documented. One second. Where is it? Components. I cannot find it. Let me do a search. Oh, I had it open before my computer crashed because I wanted to show you. So a moment. Vue component life like hooks create mounted. Okay, so this is a diagram. When you create a component, there are various events that get fired. There is a before create, which is before the initialization, really, of its own variables. It's not very often useful, but it may be useful to do something here. Then you can do stuff when the component is first created, and then you can do stuff, you know, before it's mounted, but essentially when it's mounted. Mounted means that the component has been inserted in the proper place in the page. If you you can imagine that when there is a declaration of a component such as our starts component, you need to do two things. First, you create the object, the component object, and then you put it into the right place into the DOM hierarchy. Okay, so these 2 points are created and mounted. Okay, so what I'm doing is this. When the component is created, I want to go ask the server for what is the number of stars that I should be displaying. And there are 2 slight problems in doing this. Let me tell you first of all what the function does. I say get JSON of the star get URL. I pass the ID that is my star ID. Okay, this is all very simple. And when it's done, I set the number of stars to display, and I set ready to true. By setting ready to true and by putting a if ready in my template, I ensure that the stars are displayed only once the call comes back. Otherwise, there is going to be this slightly, anxiety behavior of essentially the stars initially displaying as completely empty before they come back due to these initializations to 0, and then they would fill in only once the server calls comes back. So for every product you have, you would see the stars gradually filling when the call comes back, which is not very nice. Okay, so this instead does it at the same time. So my bug actually today was a stupid one. I simply forgot to set these, and I went through hoops because I thought I had a much more complicated bug. Instead, the careful bug to use is this. You see, inside the code, I don't have self anymore as we were using. I'm using these of JavaScript, which refers to the function in which you are, to the object in which you are. Okay, so in created in the created function, this has the value of the component that I'm creating. But if I'm not careful, these here, actually, if I use the arrow syntax, what I'm doing is not necessary. But if instead of using this done syntax, I would have used the classical function, etc., these here in this scope would not be the same these as these here. So what you need to do is this. I'm sorry. What you need to do is remember the value of these. Let me write a more meaningful comment, which is the instance, no, the component. So we can use it in the callback. Okay. So this is a sort of the magic line that's easy to get wrong. Okay, you need to do this so that in the callback you can access the component itself via this. I call it C4 component. You can call it whatever you want, obviously, right? But you need to, but you're not necessarily guaranteed that these inside these curly braces or inside a callback function in general has the same value as outside. Okay, so you see that this code per se is pretty simple. And the rest of the code is also actually fairly simple. The set stars code is the other code that has some changes. And essentially you pass an index to it. I log it just because, I don't know, I wanted to see how things worked. And then essentially I say that I set the true number of stars to index just as before. And then I need to do a call in which I send again the ID, which is these.starID, like component.starID, and number.these.numstars. Okay. What I mentioned, what I was mentioning is this: that if I write in here, just as an example, like if this returns something and function data. And I write these dot whatever is equal to 5. Okay, the these here would not be the same these as the these here or the these there. Okay, because these would essentially be the these here would essentially be related to the event of the callback, and not the event and not the component. You know, I'm not a fan of these. Sorry for the pun, but yeah. Okay, so so this is the trick, and if we see it in action, okay, so we can look at the network is maybe the more interesting thing. Okay, so I have to get, see, I have two get stars method. Each one of these elements is getting its number of stars. And when I set it, I have calls from one or from the other, or from one and from the other. And if I look at the log of the web server, the log of the web server will contain the two get stars, right, for ID1 and ID2, and then the various set statements for the various numbers of stars. Okay, so this is a beginning of using components, and yeah, and this is what I wanted to do with components now, and I may want to do more with components next time, but that's as much as I wanted to do. Questions so far? Things you want to discuss? Let me fish out the chat again. Should we improve this code on the fly? So one thing that I find not so pleasant is this, that here inside of the component we are accessing these global variables for doing the star get URL, right? So this should be specified from outside. So let's do this a moment. Let's clean this up a moment, if nobody's asking any other question, okay? So I still leave it as defined here, okay? But here, instead of doing this, okay, let me actually use a sort of verbose way. I don't know, I don't care. So I want to say something like vbind, like set URL is equal to, wait a moment. No comma. Vbind get URL is equal to star set get URL. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying on the fly, and I'm hoping with that what I write makes sense. Okay. So now I defined essentially other parameters, and so these refer to those JavaScript variables there. And so here in the code, I need to say that I not only have star ID, but I also have like set. Sorry. I have also set URL and get URL. Okay. This code is unchanged, and here I have this dot get URL, and here I have this dot set URL. Okay, gah. I should have tried it before I present it in class, and this is really not a great way of doing things, but it seems to work. property of method start get URL is not defined in the instance, but is referenced during render. Everything works, but I don't know whether that warning is something that I should be worrying about or not. To me, it smells a little bit of a fake warning. Let me see whether the thing works. Okay, so sorry, there is this. Wait, was there also another error? Oh, I think. Yeah, no, it doesn't work actually. Ah, okay. I think I see what's going wrong. Okay, let me do another attempt. Then I give up. Evident. Sorry. I think I was too cowboy in trying to do it that way. So would this way work? So in this way, I'm relying essentially on Python on filling in these URLs properly, right? Because it would be more pleasant, essentially, to be able to do it this way. Would this work? Nope. Invalid regular expression flags. Okay, so the problem seems to be that if I pass these values, no, this gets translated all right to a URL, but then there is some regular expression thing. So it essentially believes that these should be interpreted as a regular expression. I wonder if these. I wonder if it distinguishes between simply different quotes, and so whether this can be solved happily in this way. If somebody has an idea, I will show you my warning in a second, okay? Oh, okay, but I can't quite do these. I'm essentially trying to pass a string that contains funny characters according to. So I need to essentially figure out how to quote this string properly. Let me see by any chance if this solves the problem. And if not, I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. No, this doesn't solve the problem. So this is the warning. You see, I have a vbind. Okay, that says vbind get URL is equal to, and then there is a perfectly written URL. But essentially, a vbind, the vbind is doing some processing to this string. So I need to quote it in a better way. I think, so I don't know how to solve the problem on the fly. We can come back next time. I think the search I would do, so, either I go back to the previous way in which the value is communicated via JavaScript variable in some other way, right? But if I wanted to pass a URL as a parameter of a component, I think the search to do is like vbind v string quoting, okay, and one here must be able to find some explanation, hopefully. Yeah. How to concatenate a string in the context of vbind search. Okay, so I don't know, in the end, I think I would have to search the solution. It's a stupid problem, but quoting problems are one of the main ways of getting into trouble in computer science, and it seems that I'm just there. So I think this requires a little bit of searching around. These are funny sites. Sorry? Somebody was talking? Okay, so okay, this way I cannot get it to work, and so I can, this is the last version that I have that works, essentially. Sorry, there is some strange thing, so I cannot reset my code to that version. Okay. Okay, so this version works. So I have to find a better way of passing those complicated strings, because the question mark and the slashes are interpreted in the wrong way by the templating system. Okay, that's all I want to do in this class. Is there any question that I can answer now? I don't see anything. Components are cool. Yes, they are very cool. So I want to go on next time building some more examples of how to essentially encapsulate in components, for example, the display of a block of a review of a that includes both text and oh yeah, I mean we can do a little bit of playing, I guess. For example, look at why they are cool. Okay, just for the as an amusement. This shouldn't get me into trouble, but. So if I do these, fine, I have my star ratings, okay? So they work, and we know these, and it's very, very nice. So assume that after the stars, you want to actually write the number of the rating, right? This would be then a very easy change. You don't need to change multiple places in your code. We just would need to go here, no? And in the span, so this is the loop. So I would need to write something here. Actually, no, because this has the mouse over, right? So I need to do slightly more complicated. Span v on mouse over star out. Great. So this is this. I want to keep the span if v if ready, right? Otherwise, I show it too soon. But then I can simply close this span so that everything is closed, and then simply write here a span with its own closed span that contains something like I think that here I am in a template, so I haven't redefined. Maybe I should redefine what the delimiters are, but otherwise these are the standard delimiters. I wonder whether this is what is happening. Oh yes. Oh yes, you see, it's a clash of delimiters, I think, the problem I was having. So I will fix it for next time. But you see, normally I redefine what the delimiters are. But otherwise, Wu thinks that these are its own delimiters. So when I was playing inside here, inside a component, I think it might have been confused by the delimiter types. I'm not sure though. So, but at any rate, let me use here these delimiters and say, what is it? Num stars out of 5 stars. I don't know, maybe there are better ways of displaying it. Let's see whether this works. That's how life is. I always think that everything is easy, and then sometimes I get in a tangle. Wait. Error compiling template. Okay. So is this a $? Num stars is not defined. Why is it not defined? This is curious. Yep, I'm stamped. On what does this depend? Let me do one more attempt, and otherwise I say that I just don't know it, okay? These are things that I normally try to do when I prepare a class, not when I give it. No, but it really does not like it because it's not defined. Even though I define it. Does anybody have any idea? Otherwise, I will have to come back to you next time on how to do these. Okay, everything is obvious except that nothing works. Can we see my API methods? Yes, my API methods are actually super simple. Let me show them to you. And they are these. Okay, so I simply get stars and set stars. Okay, but this is also in the repository, which is pushed online, so you can go. You will have a copy of them in case they're useful. Any other issue? I'm a bit embarrassed that this didn't work. It's always like this, you know, even the simple code that I show to you, sometimes it was not so simple to get it to work. Yeah. Well, it will be an interesting mystery to solve. Yeah, how is it going? I mean, the problem is that, yeah, not coming to campus, I don't have a very good idea of how things are going. Maybe that's a real poll that I should have given, actually. Let me give a poll on Piazza simply, so that everybody sees it, on how well you're doing for homework 4. Yes, what I want to do for homework 5 is that I want to tie up a little bit some of this homework without you having to redo all of it, but with the VU-cart stripe thing that I had shown to you in the other class. So I want to close the loop. Now you have you're able to display list of products, and what I want you to be able to do is click on a product and complete the purchase. Okay. So I think I will release my testing and my testing keys for Stripe so that you are all able to use the same account and you don't have the problem of creating another account. Okay. Don't give them around. It will be for the homework only. But I would like you to essentially implement the flow of being able to put something in the cart and then purchasing what you have bought. Okay. Which is fairly similar to what I did in class, except that in class I put the cart in my local storage, but I would like you to maybe build a table that is called cart for the homework 5. So I still have to write it. I think I'll get to it later today or tomorrow, and I will release it tomorrow because I need to, you know, I always want to show it to the TAs first so that they can give me feedback and see if I missed anything. Okay. Yeah, let me do a poll on how everybody's doing, because I always have the problem that, you know, some people ask for extensions, but I would like to first have a picture of how the whole class is doing before I consider that. Okay, so I will do a poll. Thank you. Any other issue? Any other thing I can do? Okay, I'll post all the materials soon, and yeah, it is significantly harder. I was surprised how hard it is. But I'm also surprised that you don't assail me with more questions, because the best way to get me to make the homework easier for all of you is to ask me, hey, professor, how do you do that? And then I would do it, right? And I would show you how it is done. But if you don't ask questions of that kind, I kind of don't know what you're stuck on, and I can't really help you. I wouldn't really mind writing some of the code on the fly that might help you if you had some such question. Any volunteer? We have 5 minutes left if you like. No. I think the problem is really putting it all together. The local cache, you don't need it in this particular homework. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, it's how to put it all together, the difficulty. But so I think it's an important homework. Yeah, it takes time. So let me ask how everybody's doing, and if it's worth giving more time to everybody, I will give more time to everybody. Okay. In a sense, I think it's a very instructive homework, but yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and see you next week in person. I will be back on campus next week. 1:15 in 1 week. Yeah. Well, But actually, if I look on you know, some of the posts around that float around, my class is considered to be an easy one. And now that's no reason to make it harder, right? But I don't know that in the past people consider my class to be that terrible. I mean, workload wise, I guess. Okay, thank you very much. Have a very nice long weekend. See you next week. Bye.